Christy, why did The Rock go to jail?
Like, are we talking like the rock from Moana, or like, oh no, just like a rock?
Yeah, just
part of the
rock.
earth. I
don't know.
Why did the rock go to jail?
Because the courts found him guilty. Okay, so those of you that don't know, I love rocks. So I'm sorry, some of you will get this more than others.
But this is a very good, real estate joke because, I love a good quartz countertop.
Now see, do you like quartz? Because some people like granite and some people don't like stone. Some people like the quarry and...
Yes. No, I'm all about the quartz.
All about the quartz. Okay.
Yes. Legal or otherwise, apparently. Welcome to the Listed Podcast. I'm Christy Garnhardt, a real estate agent in Illinois with the RE/MAX Unites Golden Girls team.
And I'm Aubra Palermo, your local Illinois and Wisconsin real estate broker with over 25 years of experience and managing broker of the RE/MAX Unites Golden Girls team. Listed is all about real agents talking real estate in southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois and beyond. If you're interested in real estate in our region or in general, you've come to the right place.
You've been a realtor longer than I've been alive.
Now watch it. That works for some of our agents, but not you.
No, that's not even true. You can laugh at that joke. That was bad. So, Aubra, how was your week? Anything fun and exciting happen? What is today? Is it Tuesday? It's Tuesday.
I don't even know anymore. I lose track. And that all depends on what day we decide to post it too. So,
yeah.
It has been a busy spring, and I feel like, I'm getting one extreme or the other. Buyers who are like just ready to buy a house because they're so tired of looking, and others who are just like, I want to offer $20,000 less on this house, even though it's got an offer on it already. And so it's like I seem like I'm just one extreme or the other, and sellers who have been in their home for a long time. And so we're doing a lot of helping. How do they get that house cleared out? Where do they start? Because, buyers say to us all the time, where to start. Even more sellers are saying to us, I don't even know where to start. One client's been in their home for 56 years. I can't even imagine. I know what my house looks like after 20 years, let alone 56. So, yeah, how about you? How's your week been?
It's been good.
She says with a smile.
Yeah, it's been good, right? I feel like good should be an acronym for something. Probably something I can't say on the air, but I don't know. We'll have to think that later. But no, I would say that the spring season is definitely here. The markets have picked up quite a bit. Unfortunately, there's not as much inventory, but I feel like that's an old story that we keep saying.
Right. We keep telling people that, and I don't know if they even believe us. We try and give the stats and tell them to show them. I'm still not sure they believe us. Because that's the thing we battle all the time is the national news saying, the market slowed and buyers are canceling contracts and, and all these things. And then we look at our local numbers and go, wait, that's not the same. Yeah, not at all. And I had to laugh, you saying, good is an acronym for something else. Isn't that like there's a joke about, if you ask your wife if she's fine and she says yes, you should run.
Right. That's, yeah, same thing. That's a good analogy, or not an analogy, but I'm not sure what that exact
right
English term is. But yeah, if a real estate agent says they're good, you should run.
You should be worried.
Very worried. Very, very worried.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll talk about some of these numbers. We're going to talk about some of those national headlines.
Yes.
I think, we'll kind of touch on all that. So stay tuned, guys, and we'll kind of get to all that stuff.
All right, so let's get started and take a look at this month's national real estate news. The Housing Affordability Bill clears the Senate as investor ban creates some headaches. So the Senate has passed the largest housing affordability bill in decades, which includes controversial provision to limit large investors from buying a single-family home if they already own more than 350 properties. Yeah, so while supporters argue it protects everyday buyers from corporate competition, critics warn it could actually reduce housing supply, so especially in the building-to-rent market. So it's going to force investors to sell within 7 years. The bill now faces uncertainty in the House, where lawmakers are expected to push back and negotiate key differences. So it's setting up a major debate around whether restricting institutional investors helps or hurts affordability in the long run.
I think this is interesting because, when I saw this headline, I thought, we don't have such things around here.
Right, that's a lot.
That's a lot of houses. There are some investors who, own 100 houses, and actually I want to rephrase that because they're talking about 350 single family homes.
Right.
A lot of investors own maybe 300 doors.
Right.
But they own an 8 unit, they own a 12 unit, they own some duplexes. So for most investors, they talk in doors, not in single family homes. So it'd be really interesting to, and I didn't sit and do the numbers. I know, surprise, surprise, right? Actually,
I know, I'm shocked. Right? I was like, "Where's your spreadsheet?"
If I really wanted to do the numbers and figure out, how many actual investors out there own more than 350 single family homes. So I think that's very different in different markets too. Plus also in our market, owning a single family home isn't going to cash flow enough. You're going to get, let's say $1,500 for that one single family home, where you get a duplex or a triplex or an 8 unit or something like that. And maybe you're getting $1,000 per unit. And so there's $2,000 income there. There's $8,000 income there. Just a big difference. So I don't know. This is just interesting to me. What do you think as an investor also, not just as a realtor?
Yeah, especially too, you think about having multifamily properties. It really, it spreads your risk out a little bit too. So if you have one tenant in one house and it gets to be a situation where, obviously you have to repair a home and they can't live there anymore, you have a property that's vacant that's not earning you any money.
Right.
So for example, like in multifamily houses, like, multifamily units, people are going to move in and out. So maybe they want to buy a home themselves, maybe they want to upsize, maybe they want to downsize. And so if you have a 3-door and you have somebody move out, you're like, oh, well, if you've gotten to a point where you've been good with your money and you've been really good about the upkeep, you could possibly still have a property that's cash flowing.
Right.
And so one renter moving out isn't going to really hurt your bottom line. But if you have to have a property that's vacant for 6 months, that's cash out of your pocket.
Right. Absolutely. And, as getting contractors, getting things, let's say, even if it's just paint and flooring and just some basics, that's going to take a month, 2 months, and then you've got to market it and get that, re-rented, get those applications done. So yeah, like you said, you're looking at 3 to 6 months on a good day, and that property's sitting empty. So it'd be interesting to actually see how many actual investors, it also struck me as, and you'll appreciate this coming from a farm family, a lot of people think they see a Channel Seed sign, for example, and they think Channel Seed owns that farm. And so people think there's a lot of institutional farms, and I don't think that's necessarily the case either, right?
Right. That's a good point. Like the
So
seed signs are in the. Sometimes that's a seed plot, right? They want to see how well that.
Right. But most of the time it's just advertising, right?
Right.
So, but I had somebody who said that to me, and they're like, well, Channel Seed, look, they own, Channel. Actually, they didn't see seed. They just saw Channel, and they're like, oh, they own all these, fields. No, they just sold the seed to that field and they were allowed to advertise. And so, but again, that perception. So I think of this also, I wonder if this is some of the similar perception that people think, again, all these investors own hundreds of homes and they're just sitting on them.
Right. Interesting. And I think that's really it. You thinking about like, how do you get into the business? Like a lot of people, I mean, it's true. You have to know a guy or a gal. So for example, we knew some people in the area who had, I had rented from when I moved from the area, and eventually, they would like to retire. Right. So it's a lot easier to sell to somebody, as opposed to like somebody moving in and hey, if you know the family, you know them and you're like, okay, yeah, you're part of this community. Like that's how a lot of people get into it, is because like, hey, I'm looking to, and maybe some people are not getting rid of all but at once, but like, hey, I'm, maybe I don't want to run as many doors as I have right now. So I'm going to sell a couple of properties, maybe use a little more of that time to travel, put that, that income into maybe a retirement plan. So it's interesting.
Right. I was going to ask you about that, about, how do you still find deals? Because in a market where, as we've talked about, our local market's still a seller's market. So prices are high. And so how do you still find, deals and things like that? Or how do you suggest people find deals?
Right. So number one is know a really good realtor. Because that's why I'm here, really. And that's why I'm in real estate, is because of the investment property, just the opportunities that was presented in that. So again, it's knowing an agent who's going to help you get into a home for a price that made sense. So I talk about how we accidentally bought a house once and it was a flip. And like, how do you accidentally do that? And and again, so this is another, people always feel bad about like, hey, like, I'm so sorry, we looked at a house, I didn't mean to waste your time. And I was like, do you realize that like my real estate agent was like 14 years? Yeah. So it was like, wasn't 20 years. It was more than, it feels like that probably, I'm guessing though. Yeah. So Aubra was my agent for over a decade before we actually purchased a house. And then when we first purchased that house with her, then we purchased like 3 more properties within a year. And so really it's about the long game. It's about finding somebody you really trust. Aubra helped us structure our first deal so that we were able to secure the property. And then from there, it was everything that we did wrong. So all the newbie stuff, right? So you get into this property, you have ideas since you've seen HGTV, right? I mean, if they can do it, I can do it. And it's not like that at all. It's not it's a made for TV movie that would probably be more like, something on Lifetime.
Scary reality movie.
Lifetime TV. Yes. So yeah, finding a really good real estate agent. I'm not just saying that right because I am an agent, but we would not have gotten that first deal if I hadn't been for Aubra because she structured it in a way where we were competitive. She was able to stay within our budget. And then we walked through the house and she was like, okay, yes, you could get an inspection. You can fix this and this and this. However, looking at the mechanicals. The mechanicals are all over 30 years old. Like everything in the house needed to be changed. Carpets, everything needed to be painted, all the fixtures, like all the plumbing. So she helps us structure it in a way that we were able to utilize that money for all the repairs.
Well, and then we had talked about, again, budgeting, like, okay, you are going to have to replace the furnace and the central air. And we also talked about, when you decided to change, because originally you thought about buying it to move into it.
Yes.
And then it became an investment property that you were going to flip. And so then we walked back through it and went, okay, from a mindset of a flip, there's some things don't do.
Right.
And so there's things that are not going to be a return on investment. And there are some properties we walked through that it was like, okay, by the time you rehab this, even if you could sell it or you could rent it, what is that return going to be? And so sometimes it's, don't buy this because, this is not going to work in numbers game unless you're going to hold it for like your life,
right? Long term,
very long term, so sometimes it is really that. I mean, just like we talk about even with sellers walking in and saying, okay, here's the things to do and here's not to do. And so, I have sellers who are like, oh, I'm going to rip out all this flooring and I'm going to paint this whole house and I'm going to, do all this stuff. And sometimes, sure, you do need to do that. But sometimes, no, maybe you could just clean and stretch the carpets and get the house painted, or vice versa. Maybe you could just replace the flooring and the walls are okay. And so there's just a lot of those discussions, and like you said, finding somebody you trust and, rely on and can believe, what they're telling you when they're going to tell you, don't buy this, because sometimes we do tell people. I had a client the other day that I said, don't sell your house because everything they're going to go look at is going to take more money. And they're going to be moving just to move. Even if they just move across the same budget, they're going to move, and then they're still going to need to do things to make it what they want. And so then if you're going to spend that dollar amount, you're going to maybe lose a little bit even, and then you're going to still have to make repairs to get it to where you want it. And so, yes, we're going to be honest enough to come in sometimes and tell you, I don't think that's a good idea. Because it's not about the transaction for us. It's not about the sale. I've known you for over 20 years.
Yes. So, oh man, you got rid of my joke from the beginning. Now they're going to know I'm older than 25.
Okay. I've known her for 20 years. She was very young when I knew her.
Very young, yes. She picked me up from preschool when we went on our first.
She was trying to prepare early to, buy a house someday.
I signed the contract in crayon. It was great.
I think we need to get one of those from your kids, right?
Right. Yeah.
There is one that wants to be a realtor. Maybe she should sign now.
Right. Yes.
We should get her, enlisted now. So, yeah. So long story short of, how do you find the right investment? Are there any other tips you mentioned in there about, kind of reaching out to people in the community, or people you knew who owned investment properties, but you also knew they weren't 20 anymore?
Right. And that's exactly what we did. And then, sometimes you reach out and then they find like, oh, I was going to sell them to so-and-so. And then, it's really just, and that actually was interesting because we reached out to someone who's like, oh, I sold my properties to so-and-so, but it happened to be another person in the area who was very respected in the in the property management business. So even though I've not been able to purchase some of those properties, I've learned a lot from this person because we've had some interactions with them through the real estate market in town. So it's been good connection for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it isn't that they're ready to sell today. It might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, whatever. And, you know that they have your name and you're going to stay in touch. And when they're ready, maybe, you'll be ready, or maybe not. Maybe you won't want any more doors at that point. Who knows?
Right. Yeah. And definitely it's just, you can still obviously watch the market, but again, it comes back to somebody who's going to help you through the process. Because they're going to be the ones who, and what's really interesting too, is like when we walked through the house originally, like walking through with someone. And again, when you go through a house, like people bring family, they can bring contractors with them. So it's not like you have to like go by yourself and like being like, what am I doing here? But, I even walked through, I've actually shown properties with people who have walked through and they're getting into the real estate game and they're bringing other people with them that have experiences in the market because they're gonna be able to look at that and being like, why are you going to replace the countertops? Like, are they incredibly beautiful? No, but it's a rental. And if you put like really beautiful countertops in it and you walk in, they're trash, and be like, they trashed my beautiful countertops. But you want to make sure that it's an investment, right? And why you want it to be something that you're proud to have people to live in, because I think that's really important as well, is that you take care of your tenants. It's also important to look at the bottom line, because if you don't pay attention to the bottom line, then you're not going to have any units anymore. Right.
You're not going to be able to be a good landlord if you can't continue owning your properties. So, and that's definitely a thing. I mean, there is a fine line of, you want to get good quality tenants. You want to show your tenants you appreciate them and have nice properties, but you also have to make a return at the end of the day, or you're a business that's out of business.
Right.
So,
when's a good time to invest in real estate, Aubra?
Every day.
How about yesterday?
Exactly. That is the right answer. Yeah. Yesterday, when the rates were 0.25% lower or 1/8% lower, because everybody is worried about what the interest rate is, but then they forget the prices keep getting higher.
Right. And I know everybody's like, there's going to be another crash of 2008, and that's getting to be quite a bit now. And you think about some of the things that led to the crash in 2008, there are a ton of protections now in the market to prevent something like that happening again. Obviously, we know things could happen. Something happened in 2020, which completely changed a lot of things as well. But I think we have to be really realistic as well, because the longer you wait, the more often the prices of the property go up. In your opinion, what would you say, like people are saying they're looking for a deal. Like, what do you think they mean when they say, hey, Aubra, let me know about some deals?
Well, it really depends on who's asking. Is that an investor? Is that, somebody buying a single family home? Is that somebody buying their first home? Is that somebody, like when I was looking for a deal for a condo, it was, to me, am I going to find something that I can buy, fix the way I want it, and then if I had to, I could turn around and sell it tomorrow? And I think sometimes people are thinking that, but then sometimes your investors are saying, okay, how much can I rent it for? What's the return on investment? So I don't know. What do you hear from people? What do they say? I want a deal.
They want you to pay a lot less for what it's listed for.
Right.
Usually.
But do they have a reason why?
They look at the Zestimate. They're like...
Because that's, of course, right. Because everything I read online is right.
Right. And but I will say, I think too, that like I get that less than I used to of being like, this estimate says it's this, but then what they're actually doing is they're looking at the market and they're gonna be like, okay, maybe that algorithm is a little bit off, but.
Well, and it's interesting, if you look at the Zestimate history, suddenly when it's listed, it went from being a Zestimate of, let's say, 100, and then it listed for 150. Now the Zestimate says 140.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. If you actually track back to the Zestimate history, it's very fuzzy math.
Right.
Very fuzzy.
Right.
But
it's like a heart attack on this.
Yeah, exactly. I got a beat. Oh, nope, they're dead.
They're dead. Flatline. Nope.
Sorry, shouldn't say that word. But you were showing a client the other day and you called me and you're like, we feel like it's a hair overpriced.
Yeah.
However, compared to everything they've looked at today in that price range, actually in 2 days, in that price range, this one feels like a deal because it's so move-in ready.
Yes.
It was clean, it was cute, and you were like, So isn't that still kind of a deal because she gets to move in and it's done and it's, it's not all these things that have to be taken care of right away.
Right.
So everybody's perception of a deal, is very different. Some people just want to move in. They don't want to fix everything.
Right.
And, paint everything and replace all the flooring and put a new furnace in. Or let's face it, they don't have the money to.
Right.
Or the time. They're not handy. So, there's not as many handy people as there used to be.
Nope.
So, and I don't have the time. I could do some of it, but then that takes time. So then that costs me money. So what's the return on investment there?
True. That makes sense.
So yeah, I think everybody's perception of a deal is very different.
Yeah. Based on what they're out there for. Yeah, that makes sense. Investor, you're going to look at return on your rent. If you are a young family and you've got little people wandering around, you probably don't want to have a lot of construction that they're running through. And then if you are, retirement age, you want something that makes sense for your golden years. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Right. And by the time you're at the retirement age, you don't want to redo it again. You've probably been through 3 or 4 homes or maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. And you're like, I am done. This is it. I just want to move in here and I want to travel and I want to enjoy life. So, so there's also that, so again, depends on what phase you're at in your life. I met with a seller the other day and they're like, yeah, this is move number. It's in the teens. And it was like, okay, you know exactly how to stage, exactly how to get everything thinned down and prep and, and they're whatever. And they're like, yes. And we also know people just want to move in because that's where we're at. We've moved umpteen times and we just want to land somewhere. We're going to be there for a little while and that's it.
Right.
So also, corporate relocations and people moving in from out of the area, same thing. They're just I just need to get here, move in and be done.
One of my favorite corporate clients said, she goes, moving, it's like having a baby. When you're going through it, you're like, oh, this is so painful. But then after a while, you're like, oh, I could do it again,
Oh my gosh, that analogy.
I mean, I have 5 kids. I totally understand that.
I do understand that analogy because I have a good friend who had a horrible first pregnancy and she was like, never again. And I'm like, oh, a few minutes after they're born, you'll be like, yeah, I could do this again. And she's looked at me like I was growing 2 heads and nuts. She's like, no, you are crazy, never. And a month after she was like, you're right, I'd do this again.
Right.
See?
It was so worth it.
Exactly. You are worth it, little people.
Right.
Some days we...
Right. Yeah.
Some days we question.
But yeah, it was, I literally laughed, gut laughed when she said that. Cause I was like, that is the perfect way to describe it.
It is.
Because going through the process is painful, but then when the dust is settled, you're like, this is a great idea.
I'll remind you of that during your construction remodel process.
I question everything right now. Yeah.
It'll all be worth it,
Christy.
It will be.
Great. So peak season is here and agents are pumped. So we're heading into spring and summer season with renewed optimism. So pointing to increased showings, more buyer activity, and a noticeable shift in market sentiment compared to slower pace of the past few years. I think this might be a national headline because that is not what I am reading off a prompter, just so you guys know, full disclosure.
And we did say these were national headlines.
Right. I know, right. So I'm sorry, it's totally fine. But I will say that with higher oil prices and mortgage rate volatility, those do remain concerns. So even with improving conditions such as writing inventory, more realistic pricing, they're helping to bring buyers back into the market. So many of today's transactions are driven less by rates and more by life events such as relocations, marriages, growing families. So overall, agents expect a more active and balanced market in 2026 with steady momentum building despite ongoing economic uncertainty.
I will say, so it's interesting, talking about the oil prices. So we get affected by this a lot because people will move out here because they're willing to make that drive.
Yes.
But when fuel prices go up, suddenly they say, oh, wait, I'm not willing to go quite as far.
Right.
So that does really affect, especially when you get further west of Rockford. We cover that direction, but when you get further west of Rockford, it is even more so. And so I think that does affect us a lot of, when people are wanting to move out this area. But I also, one of the things it didn't mention was one of the reasons people move here is because it's so affordable.
Right.
Where most of the country is not affordable anymore. So I think that really makes a difference for us also and why we've still been seeing we say not renewed activity, continued activity.
Continued activity, yeah.
Yes, continued excitement, continued, interest, continued market has been busy all spring. We've seen with still not enough homes for sale.
Right.
One of the things it talked about too was building. We've talked about this too.
Well, what are you seeing, like realistically, price per square foot? Like, what are you seeing right now?
Cost to build?
Yes.
So I recently got a cheap, and I thought this was, and I don't say cheap in the quality, I thought this was so affordable, I was shocked. Came in at $150 a square foot. And so I'm like, okay, we might be able to do this project.
A unicorn? Like,
I'm not even telling you who the
did
builder
quote
is.
come in on rainbows? Like,
I'm not even going to tell you who a builder is because I don't want to give it away because he'll go like, okay, I need to raise my prices. But, that's part of the struggle is most new construction, you're looking at $200, $250 a square foot. And that's not for fancy quartz counters everywhere. That's not, hardwood floors in the whole house. That is just basic construction, very simple. And so, it's amazing because our existing construction is $100, $150 a square foot or less sometimes. So that's the struggle. Like we're just still so much more affordable than building, yet we need some housing.
Yes,
desperately.
Absolutely.
And so I was talking to an investor about rent to build. And so trying to get them to build some units that could be rented, townhomes, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, just very simple, 1 car attached garage, nothing huge fancy. But, again, there's a huge demand for rentals. There's a huge demand for housing, whether we turned them into condos and sold them, whether we rented them, whatever we did. And I say we, talking to the investor, I say everything's we because I think I'm a partner in the whole thing too.
The imperial realtor we.
Right. And we finally got the numbers to match, but then when you look at taxes and insurance and maintaining the snow and the lawn and the driveway and some days roofs and furnaces and, and all that stuff, and you start budgeting all of that, then it became not affordable. And so it was like, oh my gosh, I thought we got this great price from this builder. I thought we got everything figured out. It was going to happen. And then no, you got to figure all those other numbers in if you're going to hold on to it anyway. Now, if you sell them as condoized, we talked about, that might be an option, but this investor would really like to, leave them as a rented property as an asset, not just turn it and be done. So it's such a struggle.
Well, and I don't know if maybe you've seen this as well. I feel like the bottleneck comes with the starter homes because you have people who are looking for affordable homes. It's, it's either a couple or maybe a couple with 1 child. And that's also the kind of houses that retirees are looking for because it's not going to be usually not multi-story. There's going to be, fewer bedrooms, fewer, like much less square footage to take care of. And when you have, we got our boomer folks out there, a large population looking to downsize. And then we also have people looking to get into the housing market and they're both looking for the same thing. That's where I see, a lot of the crazy escalations.
Right.
Really is the super cute 2-bed, 1 bath. And then a lot of times in this area, we have these like super cute bungalows that they have the attic is redone. So you could go up there and like people are so smart. So they'll do, and they're like, you could have your studio up here, or like I've seen some people do some really cool places for kids. So people are like, oh my gosh, this house is perfect. It's our bedroom from the kid, or maybe a soon-to-be kid, and then a fun place upstairs that just sort of brings into the overall value. And that's when it's like, oh my gosh, that house went how much over asking? It's wild.
Right. Like you said, those cute little ranches, the cute little bungalows. It is funny. There is that certain size because like Vanessa and I were showing some clients the other day, some 2 stories, and they're like, this is actually a little too big. Like we don't want to maintain all this, And so then we looked at a bungalow and they were like, oh my gosh, like this is so cute. The 2 bedrooms on the main floor are fine. There was the bonus upstairs. They're like, well, someday or guests or whatever. And so, when they said it's too big, I almost kind of laughed. It's like, well, you don't hear that usually very often. Most people are like, this is not big enough.
Right.
And so, but there is that, younger starting generation that's like, I don't want to maintain this big, giant house. And thankfully they realize that, right? I mean, like, it was like, oh, this is great that they get that and they're not buying a, 2,000 square foot, giant old home. But still it was like, okay, well now how do we find you just that right little house in that right little price range? And, and so where where does that fit? Because like you said, those are going quickly, especially if they are cute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like you said, there's a lot of those seniors who are, okay, now let's downsize. I don't want to go to senior living. I don't want to go to a condo. I want to go to just my own cute little house.
Right. Still want my own space.
Yes. I still want to play with my plants and have a yard and, grow my garden.
Yeah.
And, and so, okay, well, that's great. But there's just not a lot of those. So definitely a thing.
Alrighty, so 15 states sue HUD over threat to withhold fair housing funds. So a coalition of 15 states and Washington, D.C. is suing the Department of Housing and Urban Development, arguing the agency unlawfully threatening to withhold fair housing funding unless these states align with the new federal guidelines. The dispute centers on HUD's attempt to limit how states enforce fair housing protections and restrict the use of federal funds, which critics say undermines long-standing anti-discrimination laws and creates confusion around enforcement. HUD maintains that it's enforcing the law as intended, but the lawsuit raises broader concerns about the federal overreach, states' rights, and the potential impact on housing access and discrimination protections nationwide. So I think a really important thing to talk about is, what is HUD?
Well, and I have to think about one thing in there too. You were talking about how the law was intended.
Right.
And not to get preachy or anything, but that's like deciphering the Bible. Reading legal code and then trying to say this is what they meant when they wrote this law. Everybody's going to read it different, right? So first of all, I seriously question that someone is saying this is what the law was intended when you weren't even there when they wrote the law. So it just, anyway, they have
right,
to,
I mean, it's true, but anything that's written, is also a glimpse. It's like an artifact in itself. I mean, I'll get out my third grade journals, right? Dear diary, today at basketball practice, right? Anything, and even things that are published, publicly, right? It's very much a reflection of what's going on at the time.
Right, absolutely. And so it was written at the time to take care of something going on, and then now it's been twisted or altered or interpreted in different, in different fashions. It's no different than when you send a text to me and you send a text to Christy, and it says the same thing, but we both interpret it in different ways. You hear it in your voice, in your tone, how you feel at the moment, and you read into it subliminal things that you're like, well, this is what they meant. It's like, no, I didn't mean that at all. And then you read it and go, wait, this is what she means.
Right.
No, that's not what she meant. So it's, it's very interesting. But anyway, side note,
yes,
that was
right. Yeah, I know. We're not attorneys, but I have watched a lot of Law and Order. So, so why is it important to know what HUD is?
So HUD is multiple things. So HUD is not only, as they said, the enforcement arm, but HUD is also FHA financing. So that is where when you go to get a Federal Housing Administration loan, that is coming from HUD, because when that FHA loan goes to foreclosure, it goes to HUD. And so them, holding some of these funds could potentially affect some of those FHA loans. And, I know there's questions when you take your loan application as to ethnicities and, birth and all these different things. Is that going to be affected? I don't know. Are there portions that they have to loan to certain ethnicities, certain minorities, certain things like that? So is there some question around that of certain lenders maybe have not been, doing that? But then also they are the enforcement arm. So if you have someone renting or buying who feels like they were discriminated against for any reason, that's who they contact, is HUD. And so are there some areas that are not enforcing these discrimination things or are interpreting it in different ways? Because I think there was also some question into a citizen versus a non-citizen versus a, documented, and that kind of stuff, someone who's here on a visa. So there's just, I don't know, there's a lot of layers into this, I think.
Yes, very large onion.
Yes, a very large onion that you could continue peeling, because HUD does so many things. And I don't think a lot of people realize that HUD really has a lot of fingers in housing. It also affects housing subsidies. So if you are getting a subsidy to supplement your income versus the cost of rent in that market, they also are part of that. And so is that going to affect some of that housing funding? Is that going to change based on minorities or ethnicities or anything like that? So is there some type of, discrimination going on there? Or again, with documented versus visas versus, illegal aliens or legal citizens. Yeah, again, lots of layers of onion there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think it's really important because I think a lot of people have heard of like FHA loans,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the market, but you have to look at, what is the parent entity of
Right,
that.
right. What is the ruling over that
Mm-hmm.
that affects that, or again, could affect that funding? Or again, a lot of people, are getting a subsidy to help offset their income versus what the rent is. And so is that going to affect, that population as well, which might also push some of those people into, can they buy? Are they going to have to move? Like, again, that could be a huge, factor as well. And even though we say our area is affordable, there's still a need for those subsidies.
Right. And thinking about the money that you have to put down too. So that can really, at least when I've seen FHA, it's really been a tool that people have utilized to get into a home. So it's made it accessible.
Right. Well, and I had a client recently who was worried that FHA was like a stigma buyer.
Oh.
That it was somebody who, didn't have as good a credit or didn't have as good a down payment. And they felt like maybe, some of their past credit history that was way long past, more than the 7 years and anything like that, felt like that was like coming back to haunt them and they were getting pigeonholed into an FHA. I said, no, not at all. A lot of our buyers are using FHA right now because the rates are about 0.5% less than conventional, and it requires less down payment. You can bring more down payment, but it requires less. So it's not penalizing you if you only bring that 3.5% or 5% down, where some conventional loans are going to penalize you. I say they're going to charge you a higher interest rate.
Right.
And so, I was like, and so once I explained it to them that way, they were like, oh, that's why the lender said go with an FHA. I'm like, yeah, it's not a negative thing. This is to your advantage.
Right.
And they were like, oh, okay. Now they felt better. But I think some people too, and even some sellers see FHA and think, well, this is a bad thing. And no, that is not at all. It's not because the buyer is a bad buyer or this deal isn't going to happen or something like that. Because some sellers worry about that, like how really financeable is this buyer? Are we like stretching and it's not really going to happen or something?
Right. And I know we've heard a lot of nightmares about like the FHA appraisal process. And most recently, the things that they have brought up in that process have been pretty reasonable.
Right. Absolutely. They're not as picky as they used to be. So, and again, that changes with different loan guidelines, changes with different underwriter guidelines. It changes with FHA rules and things like that they don't worry about some stuff. And again, where all of that comes from is those rules from HUD. And so then that filters down. So if HUD is having shortages or having, funding issues or things like that, then that will all affect that coming down the pipeline as well. So as any government entity, they don't always change as quickly as the market. And so sometimes we need them to keep updating.
Right. Like the HUD website. That's
yes. Well,
do I click here? Like, oh my gosh, so many screen shares.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Well, and that also because VA just changed their rules that they're not going to require the peeling paint question from the appraiser unless it was built prior to 1978.
Oh,
I was like, oh my gosh, thank you.
That makes sense.
Because why are we checking peeling paint on a house that was built in 1998? I don't care. And so they've taken that out of the VA loan now, which maybe FHA will do that someday.
Yeah, I was like 1978. It's a long time ago, and I realized that I was
alive then.
No, well, not quite, but like it's very close.
Okay, now I feel old because I was more than alive then.
Probably. You were probably filling out contracts and crayons then too.
Yes, I was writing contracts and crayons. Absolutely.
That's how she started.
No, I was negotiating, as my mother says. I was arguing from day one. So.
Awesome.
So they should have been an attorney. Like, no, I get to negotiate for a different reason now.
Awesome. We'll be right back with a look at our regional market updates. All right, let's jump to the regional market update. So in Stephenson County, we're talking Freeport, Lena, Davis, Orangeville, Pearl City. We've seen 47 homes sold with an average sale price of $180,000 and a 94% from list price to sales price. So still pretty close to that target there. So currently 81 homes are for sale with an average price of $225,000, actually closer to $226 if you're rounding up. And the higher price market has slowed a little bit.
47 homes sold last month, 81 currently for sale.
So that's not quite 2 months.
Not even 2 months of inventory. And those higher average sale prices, or average asking price at $226, you said? So that's all that higher end that's not selling, which we've definitely seen a shift in that.
Definitely slow down for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think the higher interest rates makes a big factor in that. As we were talking about earlier, I think some of those fuel prices make a difference also because people are not willing to drive quite as far. So I really think that, some of those prices may come down a little bit on the higher end, but not those ones that are 200,000, not the ones that are 100,000, 94% from list price to sale price. This is why we tell people you can't come in $20,000 under or, even $10,000 under sometimes, right? I was just surprised the other day we got a counter and the seller did come down like 5%. And it was like, right away, they came down 5%. Okay. And the buyer's like, done. Like, I'm not even going to argue,
Right.
And so, because looking at these kind of numbers, 5% is pretty average. So yeah, they were thrilled.
And we talked about earlier, like people are looking for deals and you have to think of deal just outside of numbers. So maybe thinking about deal as to like, hey, I got this home in this really great neighborhood and it's a little bit underpriced, or maybe it's at market price and you're able to get, a home that's in great condition that you can make it your own.
Right. Absolutely. Deal is a long-term thing. It is looking at your rent versus buying. It is looking at your life. And most people are buying because of a life situation. They are getting married. They had somebody pass away. They have, they're having a baby.
Having twins.
they're having multiple children, So guess what? Suddenly you need space because the little ones, I think, take up more space than we do. I mean, their toys.
It's their stuff.
It is their stuff. That's what I was just going to say. It's the toys. It's the stuff. It's all of the other things. And then wait till they get even bigger. That doesn't get any.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of Squishmallows that I have in my house literally could have their own room.
And you have one getting ready to, shop for colleges. So, I know, that makes us feel really old.
I'm going to send the Squishmallows with him, though.
But you think about all the things that, he's accumulated almost a whole household of things. And so, it's, it's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
Ogle County, so we're talking Foreston, Polo, Oregon, Byron, and Rochelle. 39 homes sold with an average sales price of $272,000 and a 94% from list price to sales price. Currently, 46 homes are for sale. We are way short on homes available. So with an average price of $324,000, the higher price homes still are moving a little bit slower.
Yeah, because again, 39 houses that have sold and 47 for sale. Oh my gosh. And the higher average sale price. It's just amazing how, you get to Foreston and Polo and Oregon and they're just down the road. But that's such a, I can't even talk today, such a significant price difference, which also is back to the why people move here, right? And because it's so affordable. And so, yeah, that's just crazy, the price difference. And so close, 20, 30 minutes away.
Yes. Down 26.
Right, right. Oh, we've been through all those towns. Not in one day, typically.
No.
I try not to anyway. Every once in a while, but I try not to.
This weekend, yes. People took me everywhere this weekend. So.
Yes. Yeah. What was the map that you drew this weekend?
It was a circle.
It was a very big circle.
Yep. All right. Winnebago County. So that's Pecatonica, Winnebago, Roscoe, and Rockton. So 238 homes sold with an average sale price of $234,000 and a 98% from list price to sales price. So no deals here.
And why? Because you'll hear about it in a second.
Yeah, right. Only 220 homes for sale right now. So with an average sale price of $299,000. So it's an extreme seller's market. They're just, that's not even 1 month's worth of inventory.
Right. That's what I was just going to say, not even 1 month of houses for sale. So everybody goes and buys the same that they were buying last month, and all the houses are gone.
Yeah. And have you ever had your phone and you're out and you're doing the showing and you have the listing and then it pops up that the house that you're touring just went pending
while you're there? Yes.
And maybe it wasn't the last one, wasn't pending. It was hey, offers are due at 2:45, and I looked and it was 2:00, and I was like, I was like, do you guys like this house? They're like, yeah. I was like, you got 45 minutes. We got to decide.
Right. No, I've been in the house showing it, and I got a notification with a notification update that it went pending, and I went, oh, thanks, great. Because what else do you do at that point? We're here, guys. Do you really love this one? Because we're going to have to make an offer so good. They're going to cancel that other offer if they can, which they can't always. And so how much do you love it? Because we might just need to go on.
Right. Next.
So that's the real heartbreak is when you're already in the house and they love it. And then you're like, oh, okay, well. And then like I said, I ask, Are you ready to make it so exciting that they really, want to take your offer?
Like over asking.
Right. With lot of less contingencies, and you're ready to go, and that's if the seller can cancel. They can't always. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, and I know that you talked about this a little bit on. I've seen on your social page lately, really talking about capital gains taxes, and they're really hurting our market. So, we think about people for say 20, 30. What'd you say? 54 years.
56 years.
56 years. One of your clients has been in the house for 56 years. You think about. You just think about the equity that the home's built.
Right. And they need that equity as older clients to live on, right? Whether they're using that equity to go buy into an assisted, to go buy another property to downsize, or they're using what everyone says it's the way to your wealth, right? Is your home. And so they want to cash out and bring that wealth with them so they can live, and now they're going to get taxed on it. So that is a huge factor in a lot of people deciding not to sell and I especially have this issue with clients who are widowed. And so there's one, and that's $250,000. If you've gained $250,000, you're going to get taxed on that. And as a married couple or, as a couple, it's $500,000. And don't even get me started if it's trust and whatever and all those things. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. So, but it's really, really, really affecting because we are in a market where people don't move every 5-10 years. Most people, it's 20 years or more. And so after 20 years, you've gained quite a bit of equity and you want to cash out on that or you need to, but yet you can't. So we really, really, not that I have an ear in the government's hand, but if you guys are listening, would you please fix this?
Right.
Because that $250,000 and $50,000 capital gains limit was written like 30 years ago when prices were way different, and 20 or 30 years ago. But anyway, in a very, very different market and a very different time. And so it really, really needs to be adjusted. That's my 2 cents.
I'll add in a 3rd cent. But we don't have pennies anymore, so I have to throw a nickel.
I got to throw a nickel in. That's my 10 cents. Mine's worth more than 2.
All right, we're going to take a quick break before we are joined by our community guest of the month. All right, so today we are joined by someone who brings a really unique angle to the real estate conversation. So Mr. Travis Cunningham, he spent nearly 15 years in the auction world, so working from everything from real estate to estate sales, from farm retirements to full-scale real estate auctions. So in 2022, you and your wife, Allison, launched A&T Auction Services, specializing in online auctions, estate liquidations, and helping people move inventory efficiently.
Yeah.
So on top of that, you're also a full-time teacher at
Correct,
Princeton.
yes.
So we're super glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here. Yeah, lots of hats, but it's okay. That's, I usually bounce from my 7 to 3 and then my 3:30 or 3:45 to whenever I get done and then go home. But it's really two different, kind of different. We'll talk about that, but it's kind of different, kind of not as far as what you get to do. You know? So it's really interesting.
Take me back to the beginning. How do you get into auctioneering?
Sure. This is a question I was thinking on the way up here because the story is, it depends on how much time you got. I could tell as much as you want. But the kind of halfway short story is I was in high school. I was a farmhand for my uncle who farmed, raised cattle, crops, and things. And he did a lot of business cattle-wise with another gentleman who was an auctioneer and a cattle broker. And I got subleased, or however you want to say it, to work for him. I worked the feedlot, we farmed, and then, of course, him being an auctioneer, I also got roped into, hey, we need to clean this house out, so we need to move this furniture, and hey, I need a ring man for this Saturday's auction, and then it just kind of morphed into this basically full-time auction gig. At one point, we were doing 3 and 4 sales a week in the summer and stuff, so I was in high school when I started there, and then I still technically work for him a few times a year. We do the Hazelhurst consignment sale down in Milledgeville, and then he does several other farm retirement sales, whatever he has on the docket. But that was how I got my foot in the door, so to speak, with the auction business, was just by being grunt labor, basically. And I could run a skid loader and I could move things, so it was, part of what I got to do. And then I moved furniture and whatever, And then I guess my stance into the business was, we were having lunch one day and he goes, I'm not going to be around forever, so maybe you should think about taking over a little bit of this stuff. Because I think he was tired of the personal property stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a ton of
it's a
work.
lot of work. And farm retirement sales are a lot of work, but it's different work. It's paperwork. It's, you know, things like that. So I said, okay, not sure with a full-time, you know, teaching gig that I can handle that, but I'll consider it. And at that time, we had just had my son the year before that. And we were like, hey, you know, maybe my wife could come home. Maybe we could do something with this to benefit us financially, you know, things like that. And it ended up working out really great. So I bought a book online that's the Illinois Auctioneer Test book. I took about 400 practice tests, and then I went to Pearson and took the test. And that's how you get licensed once you pay your money to the state. So got that done, opened up an LLC, and here we are. So that was, you know, 4 or 5 years ago and 200 sales ago. So it's, or 100 and whatever we're at now, but pretty good.
Yeah. So, so really it's, I guess, how has the market changed since then? Because I know when we think of auctioneers, you think of people like standing ringside.
Yep.
Like, can you do the funny talk thing?
I can do the funny talk thing, yes.
Do you think you can do it? Would you do it?
I can do it. You
Yes.
put me on the spot. It just, you got to decide what you want to sell here. Should we sell Will or should we sell, no, just kidding.
Why don't you sell my phone?
I'll sell your phone. All right, we're gonna sell this nice phone here by Christy Garnhardt. Who'd give $100? 100 now, 2 now, but it wanted done, but it down 100 here. Now give a quarter real quick. 100 a quarter. Now half here now, but it wanted done. Give it down 100 and a half. Now 75 here, 75. Give 175. Sold it 100 and a half. And you do that for 2 hours or 3 hours, and you get a little tired of it. But
like you're a musical guy in
Correct.
general, so did it just like come to you like that, and you're like, this guy's a savant. You're like,
No, this is a brilliant comparison. I spent, I don't know how many hundreds of hours listening to it around me.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you work a sale and then 2 days later you work another sale and it just kind of becomes a thing. Right. But as a ring man, you have to listen. You have to know where the auctioneer's at, who's in. So you listen very closely, and it's very rhythmic. When I taught myself how to do it, from a music standpoint, it's da 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 da.
That's awesome.
And then you just do your numbers, you know, 2.5, 5, 7, half 10, 12 and a half, 15, and you do that, and then your 5s and your 10s and whatever. And it's very much a rhythmic thing for me, just as much as, you know, teaching a trumpet how to do whatever. It's the same thing. So again, one of those comparisons that we'll make, but pretty interesting. Yeah. I don't know if anybody else learned how to do it that way, but that's how I learned to do it. Is just to be a little, you know, you pick a rhythm. I've heard, you know, 100 auctioneers do it, and I'm not as fast as half of them. I'm not as, you know, muddy. Some of them like to be muddy, so that, you know, but
so you walk away with
correct,
a box of Christmas decorations you didn't want to buy in the first place.
But it's it's something that you still continually work on. Like we just did Hazelhurst on Saturday, and I sold for 2 hours and some change because it's good practice, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the youngest one on the totem pole. I usually get the most not so great items to sell, but it's good practice. Yeah. So, very musical aspect behind it, which not a lot of people think about. But when they teach the chant, they teach it very rhythmically. So they teach it 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, which is exactly how you learn to count in music. So same thing.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I don't even know if I answered the question.
No, you did. No, because I was like, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but then I was like, no, I have to.
Oh, yeah. No, I figured. That's fine. It's good.
Okay, so you've worked real estate, auctions, you worked farm retirements, full real estate, so pretty different across all those different categories. So what did working across all those teach you that you wouldn't necessarily have learned any other way?
It's the auction business, in my opinion, is the school of hard knocks. It's you do it wrong 5 times so that you figure out how to do it right once. And ultimately, you're trying to keep your clients happy. But again, I was considering this question before, and it's the idea of different responsibilities for different things that you're selling. So when, politely speaking, when I walk into a house and there's, in my head, $4,000 or $5,000 worth of stuff, marketable merchandise, we'll call it, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't get as involved as if my colleague and I are walking through $1 million farm sale or a $2 million farm sale, or we're meeting with a client to sell 400 acres of farm ground, whatever, right? There's different levels of responsibility there. Ultimately, the morals of an auctioneer should be the same, because no matter what, you want your client to be represented completely with what you have to sell. But the responsibility is bigger when it comes to, hey, this is going to be like a, you know, $800,000 deal or $1 million deal versus, okay, I'm going to make $400, you know, or we're going to make $1,000, right? Like, not to discredit that, because business is great, but, and that's all good. But I think the experience in selling, and also it comes to like what things are worth. So I don't expect any, if there's an auctioneer that specializes in artwork, they're not going to know what a 7130 is going to be worth at the auction house on Saturday,
You probably tell people what a 71.
Sorry, or a big tractor, right? Or a planter, or 20 acres of farm ground, right? Like you to be multifaceted like that. And I think around here you have to be, because we're not in a market for really, maybe we are, but you have to go to Chicago really to find the art houses or the the really antique things. There's cool things around here, but we don't specialize like that. I have to know what to do if, I walk into a house and there's lots of different, there's 400 different items and 300 of them are different, then it's not the same thing. So I think working all of those aspects of the auction world give you that background knowledge of what to tell clients, right? Like, we kind of discussed it a little bit before the show of like, sometimes people have unrealistic expectations of what their things are worth. And you have to calmly and politely, but still realistically tell them like, no, your Beanie Babies aren't worth $12,000.
Oh, no.
Or, like whatever it might be. Because in 1995, they might have been, but they're not now, And so I think getting that experience, I mean, I've sold everything from Christmas lights, like we joked about before, to things that are worth a considerable amount of money. And not that Christmas lights aren't, but you know what I mean? Backing myself into a corner here. But you have to know what to do in those situations, which I think is important. So the more experience you get with that, the better.
So you are someone who's bringing together, from what I've seen, the traditional auctioneer.
Correct.
With also the online portion. So how have you seen that change over the years? But it still sounds like, there's still that need for your traditional auction.
I love a good auction. It's my favorite. Like, yes, on Saturday, like I said, we did a big equipment sale. On the 12th hour, you're like, okay, I'm done, right? Like, this is awful. But it's a social event. It's guys to have a cup of coffee and talk about that tractor that their grandson might buy, whatever, it's a really social event. And I think that's important. I think that's why a lot of people show up. But on the opposite side of that, we can talk about the COVID word a little bit.
Yeah.
That killed the online, or the live auction market for a considerable amount of time. During that time, everybody that was an auctioneer with no other income was like, what do we do?
Right.
Like, I can't have a sale. I can't find a place to have a sale. I'm not legally allowed to have one where people show up. So the market was like, okay, we have to push this online. We have to use what's in front of us. So this online market became exponentially bigger in that year and a half. And nobody's wanted to get away from it since then. It's just part of it now. So, I mean, even going back to it, we still run all of that equipment online as well as in front of us. So as you're selling a line full of farm equipment, you're selling to a computer and to whoever's in front of you, because that's, in the truest sense of the auction word, the realistic market, right? A buyer in Pennsylvania might be willing to give $22,000 for that tractor and only $15,500 here on the floor in Illinois. So you have to, if you're doing your clients truly justice, that's what you have to do. And yeah, every auctioneer, I can't speak for everybody, but it's one of those things that once you get used to it, you never want to do it another way. Some of these personal property auctions that I've done would have flopped big time had I not had them online. Also, you got to factor in the weather, right? Like Saturday here was 38 degrees and 40-mile-an-hour wind. And if you don't want to come out and sit for 8 hours until that planter sells, you can bid from your couch.
Right.
You could be having a cup of coffee and sit on your hot couch and, I'll give 20,000. I'll give 21,000. And you don't have to experience any of that. So it's the best of both worlds, right? Like there's guys and girls that love to go out in it and experience it. And there's other people that are like, I'll just sit inside and I'll do it that way. And you still get the item without the thing. So it's both.
Auctions have the best pie. I don't know if anybody knows this, but like I can't think about being at an auction without having a piece of pie. So just side note.
We do a good steak sandwich there at Hazelhurst. It is really solid. Nice ribeye.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's I kind of think in a nutshell is we have gone to the online market for several reasons, but really to satisfy our clients better. Because maybe their stuff really is worth X amount of dollars if I can market it to the right people. And I mean, we're talking, gone are the days I used to when I first started. We would literally just roll hay racks up to the house. You have a week and a half of setting things out on the hay racks. And Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, whether it's raining, snowing, tidal wave, whatever, you're going to have a sale. Well, that's great, but if you have to sell a house full of stuff to the same 12 people that braved the elements that day, that client is not going to be super happy with you. Versus on my online sales, and not just to pat myself on the back, but we're getting 30,000 or 35,000 people to see them. You won't get 100th of that to come out, even on a beautiful day.
Right.
So you're talking getting it out to more people means better market values, better coverage of, if there's a Barbie collector in Maryland that really doesn't have this Barbie, I can sell it to them and I can ship it to them, and that's all that works, So it really does the best for the client that way.
Interesting. So, looking at, like, I know that I reached out to you a couple different times, and I think it's really, like, how do you help people decide, like, what is important versus what is sentimental versus what really needs to go in the dumpster?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. And I had this conversation with a client the other day, and it was more of an apologetic tone from me because, and I'll put myself out there on blast, I don't care. For me, it's just stuff. Like, it doesn't matter whose house I'm walking through. Unless it's my house, it's just stuff. It might be valuable stuff. It might be not valuable stuff. But to me, I have no personal attachment to it. So I have to separate that of like, okay, I have to look at it from the 82-year-old lady that just lost her husband and he built or collected whatever it was for 60 years, right? To her, that's their entire life together. To me, that's just a collection of bottle cap, whatever it is, So I have to put myself in the shoes of the client as like, okay, how do they feel about it? And sometimes you have to be a little bit harsh about it and like, no, we don't need to sell that. That's whatever. But you also have to consider it from the fact of they've built lives around this stuff. They've collected for years and went to however many auctions to get this stuff. So I can't be super abrasive when I come in and be like, oh, this isn't worth anything. Why am I even here? Blah, blah, blah. You have to really, if you want to keep a good image, which I do, I care about that in the business world, it's kind of important. I don't want to just come in and be like, nope, this isn't worth anything. I can't believe you called me out here. You really got to appreciate whatever it is from their side of things. And even if it might not be valuable, you got to find a way to tell them that without breaking their heart in the process of.
So if you were going to walk through like a house, just kind of like, 3-bed, 2-bath, someone who's looking to do an estate sale, like what is actually worth something versus what is like.
It's a great question. And it really is dependent on what they have. And I know that's not the answer you probably want, but like when I walk through, I'll just tell you kind of the process. I meet them. I shouldn't say ever, but unless I have seen it before, I don't really give advice without seeing it because I have to lay eyes on it. Somebody might say, oh, I have this and it's really nice, and it's not, or it's not real or whatever, So I take it for what I see. So I walk through the whole house. We make small talk. They show me what they have. And then we kind of break it down at the end of, the market today, there's things that are worth money that people might not think are worth money. And there's
what? Something weird.
Okay. So here's
Long
one
and
that I'll
Burger
tell
baskets.
you. Long and Burgers are coming back.
Really?
But here's the one that gets me. The Christmas blow molds from like the 80s and 90s. Like you have your 4-foot tall Santas or,
the ones we used to steal when we were
I've
kids.
sold them for hundreds of dollars recently, like within the last 6 months. And it doesn't matter if it's April like it is now or if it's November 28th before Christmas, they're still worth money. So I don't know if it's a fact. I don't know enough about it, but like if they don't make them anymore or if they made them better then, I don't know what that is. But that's the one thing that's like, I've told people, I can't tell you how many blow molds I've thrown away, like working before 10 years ago, 12 years ago, like, no, it's June. They're not going to buy any blow molds. We'll just get rid of those, and now they're literally like 120, 130 bucks a piece. So that's kind of wild. You see that on the opposite side too. I mentioned Beanie Babies earlier. Beanie Babies are, I don't want to say worthless, but kind of worthless.
They're fun toys.
Yes, they are great toys that you can give to kids. And if you have a box of them or 1,000 of them, just keep them because they might be worth something someday.
Maybe.
But I just recently did this last fall. I did a collection of Barbies. A lady over about 30 miles east of here had a lifelong collection of Barbies. And I'm talking to the tune of like 1,200 Barbies in a box.
1,200 boxes of Barbies.
Like boxed, original, unopened, like everything from summer Barbie to like 60s Barbies that are really vintage to the 2000s Barbies, which they made millions of, everything in between. Barbie towels, Barbie dishes, Barbie. And in my head, I thought, oh, these aren't worth as much as she thinks. And it's going to be a really tough conversation because, again, she spent her whole life or the majority of her life collecting this stuff. And I was wrong. which is great. Thank the Lord I was wrong. Because of the fact that we were reaching out to different parts of the country. And the thing I don't think about living here, and I've lived here my whole life, is we don't have some of the markets that other people have. So I have doll buyers right now that I could call on both coasts and in Dallas. So I have like 3 corners of the country, and the doll markets
The
are
Dallas
not,
Buyer
like,
Barbies Club.
It's like, yes, yeah. But I'll call him and I'll say like, hey, Tom, I got these Barbies coming up. You know, you might want to check this out. And half of them will be shipped to Boston, or half of them will go to Sacramento, or, you know, just because they can we can only get this amount for them here. They can buy them for that amount and then flip them over there, and everybody's happy because everybody made money. So that's one of the things about this business that I never thought about. And, you know, to every scale, no matter what you're selling, people have that. You know, your father-in-law's an auctioneer.
Yeah.
He's got probably equipment, toy contacts. You could call him about any toy that's probably ever been made. And you could say, you know, hey, what's this toy? And he'd be, oh, let me call somebody.
Right.
It's the same thing, right? Like, you just got to know your people, and you got to know who to call and who to tell when, and you get the word out a little bit. So, works out nice.
Yeah. So if I could switch just a little bit to the real estate piece.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I still see, yes, we still see some ground, marketed, online, but also people still really lean into the farm.
100%. Yep.
Like how, I guess in your experience, what causes someone to lean into an auction versus leaning someone to list in?
Sure. I think there's several several things that will impact that. If it's a true estate, whereas there's no, I'll use it, grandpa dies, sons don't want to farm, or grandpa had 3 daughters who doesn't want anything to do with it, then a lot of times they'll call an auctioneer, and the auctioneer gets the land, the equipment, and all to go in one basket. You get it all. Right?
Yeah.
It's got to go. The lawyer says it's got to be sold. Got to divvy it up 3 ways for the kids. That happens quite a bit. The other thing that generally, is if farm ground especially is often pushed, or not pushed, but people often want to get it on the auction market because of what it can do to their value, right? Because if you have, and it's funny in small town politics, and could name drop, not going to name drop, but you might see guys that, well, I own the 120 that backs up to that, so I'd be willing to give this much for it. Or I know so-and-so that's going to be interested in that, and I don't want him to buy it, so I'm going to give this much for it so I can buy it. And then you get the true auction feel that you want, and it brings $3,000 or $2,000 over an acre. Well, everybody's happy then, right? So, except for the buyer. But, outside of that. But, yeah, I think it's true to, when you're the full auction experience, like what I said, where they're going to sell the line of equipment, they're going to sell everything in the shop, they're going to sell the farm ground at the end. All of that kind of lends itself towards an auction a little bit better. And when there's, how do I say this politely? When there's people involved that don't care about the stuff, they just want the money. Yeah. Right? I don't want dad's stuff. I just want, that comes out wrong. Maybe, love dad very much, everything's fine, but I don't want his collection of this. I just want my third, and I want to go back to my, get away from it. So I think that often leads into it too, is do you have interest in the things, or do you have interest in the value in the things? Because they're 2 different things. And also one thing I didn't think about till just now, how fast do you need it done? Right? Like if they need to have the estate settled by X date, or what other factors are involved, it might be an auctioneer is the only option to get it done by then. Because you well know it might sit on the market for 3 days. It might be on the market for 8 months. You never know, right? So if they say, nope, on this Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning, we're going to sell this acres with this and this, sometimes it kind of leads itself to that.
Okay, so let's stick with the avatar. Sure. Okay, we've got the 3-bed, 2-bath. We've sold all the Barbies. And the house is clean now.
Yes.
And you decide that they're like, did such a great job with the Barbies. We want you to sell the house now.
Sure.
So what does that, like, if I want to be a buyer and I want to come to an auction, like, what is that like? Like, can I just show up with my lender buddy? Can I, like, what is that? What do I have to bring to a real estate auction?
That's a great question. You have to do a little legwork in the process. So generally, people that come to an auction they know right away whether they're going to be interested or not.
Right.
For example, you don't impromptu buy 20 acres and a house and a barn, right? Like you're not just going to get suckered in by the auctioneer to raise your hand for X amount of $100,000.
It was here for the Barbie and now
exactly,
I have a barn.
Right. So you usually know, like, I'm interested in this piece of property. It's going to be sold on this date.
Yeah.
So you go to the bank, you say, hey, can we swing this? What do we have to do to swing this? Generally, you have to have 10% down. Sometimes it's 15 day of, and then you have to have the remaining within 30 days. So you have to come at least a little bit prepared. And you also have to be prepared for the auction effect of, well, I'd want to give 200 for it, X amount, whatever. But I'm in at 210 and I really want it. So I need to give 220, or he's asking for 212 and a half, whatever, So you have to think about that and either know when to stop or be really good buddies with your banker, because that's going to happen too.
Do people actually bring their bankers with them? Yeah,
sometimes that happens. Sometimes
and they can like squeeze your arm.
Correct, especially in small towns like this. I've seen it happen where they'll either bring their banker or they'll bring their lawyer or they'll bring whatever.
Yeah.
And now, frankly speaking, most guys that are in a position or people that are in a position to do that don't need their banker because they know their banker well enough.
Right.
But there are some younger couples, whatever.
They want a piece of pie?
Correct. And sometimes the bank needs to see it. If you're looking at a place 40 miles away that needs to be sold or that's going to be sold on an auction, sometimes they'll ask to see it. Obviously, most real estate auctions are as is, where is, and how is. So you don't get an inspection. You don't get anything like that. They're just selling the property the way it sits. So a lot of times people will come in and see it before and check the well or check the basement, whatever. So yeah, you'll see bankers involved or people involved, extra people involved in that too.
And so, I mean, so what you're saying too is like you could actually go see the property before. A lot of times,
yes.
Okay.
Very rarely is a property sold without being able to see it before the day of. So at least the auctioneers that I know will. Generally, those dates are set well in advance, especially for farm ground, but like farmsteads, things like that. Especially older homes that have been around a while, they'll say, hey, the auction is 3 months from now. They don't necessarily, well, some do, an open house viewing, but you can call the auctioneer and say, hey, so-and-so, I'm really interested in this property. Can I see it? And then you set up a one-on-one meeting and they'll walk you through it. And, and I do that for personal property stuff. Like, if I was a buyer, I'd want to probably see what I was bidding on. And sometimes the day of the auction or the online pictures don't do it enough justice, right? Or dolls or anything like that where it's cracked or things like that. We try to represent things the best we can, but ultimately it's buyer's decision whether they're interested or not. Right. So almost every auction I know of outside of maybe vehicle auctions or things are as is and where is. So however it sits is how we're selling it. If we know about it, we'll tell you. And if we don't know about it, I can't help you, But yes, that does happen, to circle back around. You can see it beforehand. You can see it multiple times. You can, sometimes it happens where you see it in one season and they sell it in another. So you see it in early spring and the sale's not till May. So you get to see it, what it looks like without corn surrounding it and what it looks like when the corn's 4 feet tall. Right. Or, whatever that might be. You see it in July when the corn's 4 feet tall and you see it in September when it's 12 feet tall, small things like that that make a difference.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are there times where you would say like this makes sense to do like a traditional real estate sale, or do you feel like you just do like you can
like as opposed to an auction? Yeah. Yeah. I think auctions have their times and places, but I think there's a lot to be said about selling it on the real estate market, especially if you have a good realtor. I think that helps a lot too. If you're not in a hurry to sell it, if it's not a need to be sold at an auction, I'm probably pushing business away as I say this.
No, you're not. No. Well, I feel like I was like, man, I was like, maybe I need to be an auctioneer now.
There is, and I've seen a big push recently against real estate auctions outside of farm ground. Yeah. Farm ground is, I don't want to say 100% because nothing is 100%, but 98% of the time farm ground is going to go to auction because that's just the way it works. You want to pull as many farmers as you can. You want to get that aspect, like I mentioned before, of I don't like that guy, so I'm going to buy it, or
I want to get it. So
right. I want to buy it so he doesn't get it, or I want to buy it so my kid can live there, or whatever. Right. But outside of that, if you're talking about a little 2-story house in town, a realtor might do you a lot more justice that way. You know, they'll likely take better pictures. They'll have you have it inspected, things like that. You know, I'm thinking as a guy that's bought a house before, I wouldn't have done it without a realtor because it's, you know, I was young and kind of dumb, but I was just like, where do I sign? But, you know, they do a lot of things for you that an auctioneer either won't or can't. As far as their responsibilities.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing too is auction that puts a lot of
it's all on the buyer.
Has to do, the buyer has to do the research.
Because I know every auctioneer, if you come back 45 days after the sale and you're like, well, they're like,
sorry,
I sold it. And we told you that beforehand, and that was part of the deal. So, you know, politely, and it's not like they're being mean, but that's their job, right? They told you this is how it sits, this is what we're going to sell, and they sold it. Or whoever, you know. I've had that happen with personal property things where I've sold a lawnmower, and the guy was like, well, this thing doesn't run. I said, it ran when I've sold it, and I don't know what to tell you about that. You know, like is what it is.
The mouse chewed the wire.
Exactly, right? Like, so, but yeah, there are certain situations where I would definitely say, you know, don't call an auctioneer, call a realtor, because it's all about who you know and it's all about who they know.
Right.
If they know some, like you guys have clients that are like, hey, find me this, hey, find me that. That's pretty important in the terms of, you know, again, when you're talking about money the size of a house or a property or whatever, that's important stuff. You're not just going to, you know, not that an auctioneer can't do it, but an auctioneer might come 30,000 over, he might come 50,000 under, you know, and you all usually have the right to say no, but at the same time, if you don't sell it, you know,
then you're going
to, exactly.
You have to list.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So all interesting aspects of that. And there's never one size fits all. It's usually if certain situations call for this. A lot of times if a lawyer is dictating what's happening, then you don't get to say much in it anyway. But as an executor or as, you know, some people have directly in their will that it's going to be sold at public auction. Everything I own is going to be sold at public auction. In fact, to share a personal story, I just had a lady call me yesterday or the day before. She's 87 years old and she wanted my approval to put our business in her will so that we got to do her auction. And she's very healthy and very still much alive.
That is testimony.
I said, yes, you can please put us in your will. I knew the lawyer. I said, just tell him, you know, it's fine. But yeah, that happens too. So sometimes the executor's hands are tied. Sometimes it might be better if we put it on the market, but they say, nope, the will says right here that it's going to be sold at auction no matter what. And that's the way it goes.
So how do you balance that? Because if people are writing you in their wills, you must be pretty successful. And I know that I would be like, and again, this is like, you know, personally too, like you do really a great job, especially in the music department, especially with my kids. And you're a very patient man, so I appreciate you. But yeah, how do you do it all?
My wife asks me that sometimes too. Like it's just a matter of sometimes I delegate, which I did the first. I should say we. My wife and I did the first almost 2 years completely by ourselves. So, but again, this was one kid, not pregnant with twins, you know, not getting a master's degree on my end, not things like that. Yeah, it's a little easier. As our lives have continued to complicate or get more complex, I should say, it's getting a little harder to balance everything. But I just delegate more. I've got 3 or 4 employees that work for us pretty regularly, so I think training them has become more important than me doing it on my own.
Right.
So I check in with them. I say, hey, you know, how's it going? I always keep in touch with our clients and say, hey, so-and-so will be here from this to this time. I do some of the work, but I try to sublet it, you know, hire some of it done so that I can be home with my kids or I can go to the trampoline park, which is what we did yesterday instead of working. That's what we did, you know. So it definitely takes a lot of balance, and not that this is a marriage podcast, but a lot of communication too, because my wife gets so mad at me when I'll say, oh, I got to run to Amboy and do this, or I got to go meet a client here. And if I don't tell her those things, I talked about it in my own head for 45 minutes, but I didn't tell my wife who, you know, was running the rest of the house. So that's kind of been a learning curve too, is Travis, Travis, if you're going to do all this business, that's great, but we got to kind of map it out a little bit better.
What skills have you found that have been beneficial in both?
Well, I mean, it's working with people. I mean, I think that's to be said about a lot of careers, but working with parents on the teacher side of things is a lot like working with a client. I mean, like you're trying to keep them happy while also provide them what they need to be provided. Like one is with their kids and one is with their property, but same thing, right? Like I had a situation recently where the client was not so enthused with what we did.
Yeah.
And I can't control that. I mean, we did everything just as what we did of every other sale we've done. It didn't turn out the way they wanted it. I got an earful over it. I apologized. I made it right with them on the bill, and you move forward, right? Like, I've said things in the classroom before that I didn't mean to say, or that I maybe said out of a little bit of frustration. And then you talk to the parent, you apologize for it, you move on. Everybody's okay with it, right? So if you're not, then you solve it. If you are okay with it, then you develop and move on. And, the tougher thing with the school part is that I get kids for 7 years instead of 3 weeks. So it's a little different on that front. And I think that balancing, we just talked about balancing the workload. That's taught me a lot of when I was a first year teacher, which you knew me very well as a first year teacher. I worked incessantly at home. I'd stay late. Of course, again, didn't have kids, but my wife and I had to have a conversation of like, hey, this does not dominate our entire life. And we had the same conversation with the business of it's helping her stay home. It's doing great things for us, but it cannot dominate kid time. It can't dominate family things. I don't work on Sundays anymore, which I used to work. I'd leave church and go to work, and I don't do that anymore. It just all takes a little bit of balance, and there's ebb and flow, right? Like from November to middle of January, I didn't have a sale. I had no business, which is fine. But then from January to now, I've done 9 sales. So it's like, or 8. You're 8. But either way, like it's ebbs and flows. Sometimes I'm absolutely 100-hour weeks just running, and other times it's like, okay, I don't have to work this week, or we don't have to start that sale till February, whatever, So it does come and go. But I've definitely tried to be a lot more intentional at home of like, business is great, but it's not what's going on at home.
Right.
It's 2 separate things.
So when you talk about time, like we're going back to our 3-bed, 2-bath. Okay, the Barbies are back in the house now. Okay,
back in the house.
So back in the house, all the stuff. Like how long would it take to get a sale set up?
I will give you a snapshot of a normal, air quote, house.
Yes.
Like standard what I walk into.
Yeah.
Some of it's going in the dumpster. A good 75, 80% of it's going to be sold. I generally quote the client somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 hours, completely from front to back.
Okay.
So that means tagging everything, sorting through everything, taking pictures, setting up the online sale, running the online sale, and doing the pickup at the end. On a heavy sale, we'd be 60-ish. On a pretty light sale, we'll be 35 or 40. I can't really do one I can't do one of substance for less than 40 hours.
Okay.
It's just kind of how it works. But it also really depends on what it is, which I've learned too. Like I said, the school of hard knocks. I've quoted clients like, oh, we could do this in 30, 35 hours. And they've got 18 boxes of china that's all wrapped one individually in the attic. And it's like, okay, well, this is going to be way more than that, And luckily in my contract, we don't have to specify like I have to do it in this amount of hours. But when you come in 20 hours over what you quoted, it's a little bit, it's a little bit tougher of a conversation. But it does depend on what it is. I've done some in as little as 20 hours. Wow. It just depends on how much work, if you have a client that's willing to do some of it for you. Often I get asked, what can we do to help you? And I'll say, well, if you're not going to sell it, move it into this room so I don't have to ask you 47 times, am I selling this or not selling this, right? Like, we've done it that way too, but.
So if it gets bought and people don't come pick it up, then what?
So in my contract, it states that it's always the it's always the client's stuff.
Okay.
So I never take possession of it. I'm just acting as a third party to sell it. So the only transaction that technically takes place is between the buyer and the seller.
Okay.
So if it doesn't get picked up, then it's still the seller's. They get to do with it what they want. They can keep it, throw it away, donate it, whatever.
Do you have a timeline? Like you must pick it up between.
We usually
come get your Barbies.
That's a good question. Some people abuse it, which is normal too. But I usually we have a pickup day, which we have a sale. My sales generally run like Thursday to Sunday. We'll do a pickup on Wednesday or Thursday, so it gives us a couple days to sort things through, a couple days to move things that didn't sell. And then I usually give them 7 days. Gotcha. So if it's a week after the pickup date and I haven't heard from you or you haven't showed up, too bad, so sad. I got to move on with my life, and that is what it is. So it depends. Now, if we're talking about a $2,000 mower or whatever, I'll give a little more grace.
Right.
But if it's a $2.50 box of pins, too bad. I'm out. Right? Like I got other stuff to do.
Yeah. So like What are some weird things that you sold? You were like, I can't believe I'm selling this, but here we go.
I thought about this because I know you mentioned asking something like this before.
There's a couple trick questions.
I've sold more bedpans than I care to admit.
Right.
Which is like...
And people buy them?
Yes, and not specifically like the plastic ones you would get at any hospital now, but the metal ones are somewhat of a collector's item, which I did not know, and I've probably sold 20 of those in my career. So that was one thing. I've sold wigs before. I had a guy that had a collection of wigs, like real human hair wigs. But the thing that gets me is the dolls that I sell are straight out of like Conjuring. Like eyes follow you throughout the living room.
Oh no!
And I'm not a scared man. I'm usually pretty solid. And I've been working later at these places, and I'm like,
things are looking at me.
Oh yeah, like the eyes definitely move. Things like that. So some of the dolls, and it's like, I know there's collectors out there for them. I just wouldn't want it in my house.
Right.
Like, this thing's going to sneak out of its case in the middle of the night and like do something bad to me. But like, yeah, there's things that I tell clients this all the time. I say, you're going to be really shocked at what some things bring in a good way, and you're going to be kind of deflated in another way about some things that don't. But it all comes out in the wash. Yep. I've had boxes of whatever it might be, little miscellaneous things that there's one thing in there that somebody sees and that box will bring $80, $100. And you're like, wow, I expected that to sell for a little bit of nothing, you know? And then you have the opposite where usually it's on bigger items, not always, where you're like, oh, I expect this to bring 10,000, 5,000, and it might come shy of that. But it always comes out in the wash, But yeah, one of my favorite things about this job is seeing what people have. And I mean that in the nicest way, like just...
That's my favorite part of showings too.
It's
I was
cool.
like, oh
like,
my gosh.
I've seen some really neat, like I'm a big fan of like memorabilia items. So whether that be like, beer collectibles, things like that. And some of these collections are just astounding. And local, within like 20 minutes drive, you can find some really astounding things. I just was talking to a guy in Lost Nation or South of Grand Tour down there who's got a really, really cool beer collection. And there's like 8 people that know about it. Right, like he might tell his close friends and they know he's got it, but it's not like he's not broadcasting it. And so every once in a while you stumble upon a really cool, you're like, oh my gosh, this is jam-packed full of really cool stuff. And so that's one of the cool things is, you find things as you dig, and it's just a cool part of the job that just people have these things and you might never know it, but they've got it buried in their basement or their attic or whatever.
Cool.
Pretty neat.
So where do you see A&T going from here?
We've been growing every year since we started. Our client list, our customer list that have bought from us is over 2,000 now, and I've gotten people all across the country. I mean, I wanted to, when I first started, keep a map of every state I've shipped to, and we've got to be close. I've never done it, but we've got to be close to getting across the country. So it's a really cool business, and I really want it to stay in the family. Like, I've got a son and a son coming. If either one of them is interested, hopefully by that point, it would be a cool like handoff. Like, here, we built this for you. Do with it, if you want to work it, great. I can't wait for the free labor when they get old enough to use it too.
It's a full circle.
Awesome. They can pay their dues like I did. But no, it's been a really good. It gets my wife home, which is, now that we're going to have 4 kids on the ground, is super important. And that was something we didn't think was possible 5-6 years ago.
Right.
It was a 2-income house and had to be for a long time. And it's just allowed us to make some changes in our life that's really benefited us in a way. So I hope people keep calling. I talked to a really good friend of mine who has a successful business, and he said, Travis, when you start a business, you hope the phone rings, and for the rest of it, you hope it doesn't stop. And I was like, that's pretty true, Dale. I was like, that's pretty cool stuff. So, that's just, I just want it to be something that we can continue to build. I'm really proud of our business model. I really pride myself on doing right by people. And I like that people recommend us. I think that's really cool. When I get done, I always want people to say, hey, we did a good job and we did right by them. So that's, in a nutshell, I want it to be something my kids can take and hopefully do from there.
So if someone needs you to do an auction, either for a personal property or you're looking at an estate sale, how do they get a hold of you?
I'm kind of old school, so cell phone's the best way. My cell phone number, 815-297-4595. Call, text, carrier pigeon, whatever. Just make sure you get in touch with me. I'm the only one that'll answer, so that'd that'll be a good thing. And we do have a Facebook page too. So our Facebook page is A&T Auction Services with the little ampersand in the middle. And you'll see we're based out of Forston, so it'll say right on the bottom there. And you can send us a message on Facebook that way if that's your preferred method of contact. But somebody will be back to you, I say 48 hours, but as fast as we can.
So Travis, this has been a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking your time
Appreciate
to come out
it.
and see us, and wish you all the best of luck.
It was a blast. Thank you.
Yep.
So guys, my tip of the month. We said earlier, peak season. It's mud and rain season, let's face it, right? So it's a great time to see a house. Oh, and hail season, I forgot about that. So please don't skip the home inspection. We appreciate you listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the listed podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can also go to goldengirlsteam.com/listed podcast.